And welcome back to Who Would Win. Today's Who Would Win comes to us from Victor Von Doom. That's the question. Who would win a fight, John Wick or Niko Bellic from the Grand Theft Auto games? I don't think we really need John to go over John Wick. I mean, John Wick is Baba Yaga. He was a hitman for the Russian mob, and he's a pretty well-known hitman in the hitman world, as he is, it seems everyone knows him and the reputation he had. Of course, when we see him in the movies, actually, I think he's been in retirement for 5 years, so he's actually rusty. When you think about that in John Wick, in John Wick 1, 2, and 3, he's out of shape, and I mean, maybe not completely out of shape, probably still stays in shape, but he's out of practice. He's probably maybe just a little bit out of shape. Probably doesn't do the same workout routine he had when he was like working with the mob. He hasn't killed anyone. The dude is like rusty. So, what was he like in his prime? Like, he even say that in the third movie when the two guys are fighting him. He's like, oh, what do you think? He's been out of practice for 5 years, but he's still John Wick. I mean, he's a master martial artist, hand-to-hand fighter, master marksman, can kill you with just about anything, including a pencil. And also, one of the big things is he can take a huge amount of punishment. Like, this guy can take a serious amount of pain. Pain, injury. He's gone quite a while with, like, bullet wounds and stuff like that. Stab wounds. He's been beaten and bruised multiple times, and he basically just keeps walking it off. So, I mean, the guy is just kind of nuts. Niko Bellic from GTA. He is one of the protagonists you can play as. Or a player can choose Niko as their parent model in Grand Theft Auto Online. But he is the protagonist of Grand Theft Auto 4, I believe, and supporting character in The Lost and the Dam and the Ballad of Gay Tony. He grew up in Yugoslavia, where he fought in the Yugoslavia wars. He later worked for organized crime syndicates as a hired gun in Liberty City. Ever since the wars ended, Niko's main goal in life was to find and kill one of two men, Florian Kravik or Darko Breivik, for one of them betrayed his military unit during the wars and nearly killed him. Niko is the younger cousin of the Roman Bellic and son of Niko Bellic. So in terms of like actual abilities or anything like that, there's not much to really say about him. He is a hired gun. He's a trained killer. Maybe not a trained killer, but he's a former soldier. He actually served in the military. And as such, he has a lot of combat experience. He has a lot of firearm experience. So it really just comes down to who is probably better. Now, I've never played the Grand Theft Auto games, and the problem with that is that if you take the story elements out of there, and there's probably only so much story elements you get that actually shows what he's capable of. The character, this is why doing game characters is such a bitch and a half to do, because you're only as good. The character technically is only as strong as the player playing them. In theory, you could go God mode on the entire thing, and no one should be able to touch your ass. But if there's no story to, those story elements, like cutscenes, that illustrate how good of as job he is, well, then it's a moot point then in terms of how good the character is. And before anyone even tries to make the same argument I hear all the time with these type of things, it's like, well, he would just snipe John Wick from a distance. That's first off, that's not a fight. And second off, what's to say John Wick wouldn't do the exact same thing? Because we saw him do that in the movies. So those arguments are always not null and void. Those arguments never work. From what I can tell from Niko certainly seems to be able to handle himself. But first off, you can tell a lot about a man by the way he dresses himself. Clearly, he's a bit more street Niko than John Wick is, although John Wick is still also very street himself, just in a different manner. But the way John usually holds himself, he's usually, in a black suit piece. He wears bulletproof armor in line with his jacket and clothes, or at least his jacket. And John is just as much a master of weaponry as probably Niko is. Really, it comes down to will and drive, and I think John Wick. I know very little about the GTA games, but John Wick seems to always have a little bit more willpower than these slightly above average assassins, and just will to live. But B, in terms of actual skill, I mean, Niko comes off as a guy who John would probably know in the universe, but also John would probably put a bullet in pretty quick. He doesn't seem to be anything more than like what was it, Cassius, Common's character in John Wick 2. Like, he doesn't seem to be anything more than maybe a Common type character, not Common, you know what I meant, that type of character. Maybe even not as effective as Common is, because Common was also, you know, a pretty effective assassin and could give John a good run for his money for a little bit. So, yeah, I mean, and as far as I can tell, Niko, from what I can find, isn't that skilled. I mean, he's probably, I mean, like I said, he's a hired gun, and he didn't work in the military, but he's not a trained assassin in like these guys. You see, that's the big difference, I think, between the two of them. While he worked for organized crime, he's a hired gun versus a legitimate assassin. And I think that's the distinction you got to make. This isn't like Hitman 47 versus John Wick, where both are highly trained assassins. One is a trained hired gun. You could make the argument assassin. And I mean, sure, you're a hired gun, you got to like do a job, you got to assassinate people, sure. But there's a difference in terms of who you are as an individual versus a hired gun, which could be any guy who you just give like 10 grand to put a bullet in someone, or an assassin who has to go after a high-profile target and take them out. I don't see Niko going after, say, like the head of one of the heads of the high table very effectively. Whereas John obviously did and actually took out two members of the... Think about that. He took out two members of the high table. And he did it actually with very little effort when you really break it down. Yeah, he had to go through a whole bunch of people to get to Santino. But when it all is said and done, John still was able to just get to... John still just walked in and shot him. It wasn't like he had to go through a bunch of people and then shot him in the face. No, he had to go through a bunch of people, walked in, weighed his options, and then just shot him in the face. And with, oh God, what was his sister's name? Santino's sister. Anyway, he literally snuck in. Honestly, it was easy as hell for him to get to her. That's the scary part for John. Like, it was frightening easy how he's able to get to her. So yeah, I don't see Niko being able to be that suave or that you know, I need the ghost, you know, that smooth of an operator comparatively. And that's the difference between just a hired hitman and an actual assassin. And John's an assassin. So I would go John Wick in this fight. But this is, I mean, I think Niko would put up at least somewhat of a fight. He'd probably be one of the more effective thugs that John ends up fighting against. Like, he'd actually probably have a fight with Niko, but then quickly just boom, boom, and then just, yeah, it's done. Whereas with someone like Common or, I can't remember, Iron Chef guy. I can't remember his name. The guy who hosts Iron Chef. That was like a legitimate fight John had with him. And with Common. So, yeah, I couldn't say for certain how well Niko would hold up. I think he'd hold up for a little bit, and then John would just put a bullet in him, or break his neck, or break an arm or something, and then put a bullet in him. Anyway, I digress. That's my thoughts. What do you think? Put in the comments below. But thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Like, comment, share, and subscribe. As always, if you want us to review something, put in the comments below. Let us know. We'll do a review of it at some point. Hit that bell if you want to be notified, and I'll see you later.